We are down to the top 10 matchups. And if you're feeling the Hard Knocks hype, this is the video for you. That's right. It's time to discuss the New York Football Giants. Welcome to Summer School, Club Fantasy's best ball podcast, streaming exclusively on YouTube. I am your host, Austin Amandolia, and here with me, as always, is Matt Record. This is a CRAM session focused on a Week 17 matchup. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get coverage of every single one of these Week 17 matchups. We are discussing our 10th ranked game. We're getting closer out of scraping the bottom of the barrel, getting to some more interesting matchups, although not that much more interesting. We've got ranked 10th, the Indianapolis Colts versus the New York Giants. The basic stats and betting lines of this game is a 43.5 point over-under, which is ranked 12th out of the 16 games in Week 17. The New York Giants are 2-point underdogs, so it's expected to be a close one, but they are underdogs. The combined Week 15 and 16 total for these two teams is 178.5, which ranks 12th out of 16th of the 16 games. So again, not a lot of high upside according to Vegas. The ADP of the first player coming off the board in this matchup is early round 2 and none other than Jonathan Taylor. However, this is a dome game, so that has some advantages to it. And it has been ranked, we have ranked it 5.3 out of 10, so getting a little bit above the middle of the pack. So, Matt, tell me, how does this matchup go well?
Yeah, I think like many of these matchups do, kind of dependent on the quarterbacks, right? So if Anthony Richardson is still healthy and is the same guy he was for those 4 games last year, that makes everyone on the Colts more dynamic and, popping off. And then, or can Daniel Jones go back a couple of years when he was that top 5 guy? Why the Giants gave him the contract that they did, which looks a little silly after last year. But if he can be that guy, I mean, again, the offenses are way more tasty than they have been. So I think if both quarterbacks are playing at a high level, should be a nice, close, competitive game, which means both sides will have to keep, throwing and trying to score. And I think that'd be really awesome for our little tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to really come down to the quarterbacks in this one, which often happens, but it feels even more important in this matchup because we have 2 quarterbacks that are sort of injury prone or known for their injuries. At least they're both coming off of injured seasons where they had season-ending injuries. So then both teams were kind of down bad. Like Gardner Minshew he made it, but that didn't mean that the Colts were good last year. And the Giants, we were all over the place with the backup quarterbacks last year. So it's going to rely a lot on their health. I think it's also just going to depend on how do the coaches of each of those teams continue to develop. We have 2 really great offensive minds, and Shane Steichen for the Colts and Brian Daboll for the Giants. Are they able to allow their offenses to take a step forward? I think there's a good chance. I like both of them as coaches, and if they're able to do so, this could end up being way more of an interesting battle than we might think. However, how does this matchup go poorly?
Yeah, I mean, like most of these, sort of the inverse. Richardson's hurt. Their backup's not doing great. Daniel Jones is the Daniel Jones we saw last year. Even if he's healthy, there's a chance he's bad, right? So it ends up being a nice, close game. And no one scored. I mean, I think it's this matchup is so quarterback dependent for me. Like, it's hard to get off that.
Yeah, but don't worry, Matt. Joe Flacco is now at the Colts.
Oh, good.
So that might be the game changer here. No, I'm with you. This game goes poorly if the quarterbacks are not healthy at this point in the season. I think that's the primary way. I think too, both of these defenses were a little bit interesting last year. I think, not the Giants. Sorry, they're interesting going into this year. At least the Giants having Brian Burns, this could get a little frisky on that side of the ball. So it could be that this ends up being a defensive battle. I mean, the sports books either think the offenses are going to stink or the defenses are going to be good to be at that 43.5 point over under. So there's definitely a lot of jeopardy. I think the health is the biggest issue. Also on the Giants side, they never seem to have a healthy receiver room, or at least a somewhat healthy receiver room. Like, one of the things that I wrote about Daniel Jones last year is that he is rarely played back-to-back games with the same receiving core just due to health. So I think that'll continue to be something to track their health as we go into the season. But there are still some players worth drafting. Who are your favorite stacks and correlations in this matchup, Matt?
Yeah, if you've been following us, you know that I love sort of cheap, free stacks. Obviously, there are some really nice, expensive stacks out there, but like I like the free ones because there's no real risk there. Daniel Jones going off the board. Where is he? QB 25. Like that is so tasty for me. Just because you can get him for free. There's a chance you're probably drafting him as your QB3, so he's not even going to be relied on. Or that like he could turn it back from 2 years ago. Like last year, he was unhealthy, and then who I'm going to be stacking him with? Like, give me Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 20. Sure, why not? Really, any of those like Wan'Dale Robinson's going off the board as wide receiver 74. You can get this stack like in like the last 2 rounds if you really want to. So yeah, just banking on maybe he turns it back. Why not?
Yeah, I love that because I think too the thing that's interesting about this matchup is you have some pretty good Colts players that are kind of out of value right now, and I like Michael Pittman, taking him in the 3rd round. I like AD Mitchell, taking him in the 10th round. Even Josh Downs in the 12th round. Like, there's a lot to like on the Colts side of this, and so you can take some Colts early and then get some later backdoor stacks with the New York Giants. I love me some Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Daniel Jones, he's free. He's worth it at this point. I love having some Devin Singletary in there. So like I have no problem taking 5 players from this matchup. It in a given lineup. Now that means that, I'm not doing that every time because I don't want this matchup to, go poorly and both quarterbacks are injured and it just like wipes out half of my lineups. But having 1 or 2 lineups where I've just really bought into these 2 teams, I'm definitely here for it because they're 2 teams that could take a step forward and are at a value right now compared to where people just based on the expectations people have for them. Speaking of that value, who is the best value at ADP right now?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Pittman at wide receiver 24, but because you already mentioned him, yeah, I'll just go a little more on Devin Singletary at running back 32. I mean, when he last year on the Texans, he was their RB1, right? Like he overtook it from Dameon Pierce. He was very productive on that offense. Now he goes to a Giants team that has fewer playmakers, right? But and then a worse offensive line. But I mean, RB32, like this is a guy that will be, if you've been watching the Hard Knocks, like they're really high on him. Like he's going to be their starting running back. You can get a starting running back at RB32. It's crazy. So if you can wait that long and get someone like him, you should do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think my best value is whoever the wide receiver 3 in New York is going to be. Like it could be anybody, and we've seen it change from week to week in recent years. There was that season 2 years ago, where you had a mixture of Wan'Dale Robinson, Isaiah Hodgins, and oh boy, who's the other guy I'm thinking of? There was like a 3rd receiver, Richie James. They would all just kind of like take turns, and it was wild for DFS tournaments because you're like, how do I figure out which of these guys to pick? But I see a similar scenario potentially going into this year. You've got guys like Wan'Dale Robinson going off in the 15th round. Darius Slayton, yes, he is still playing in the NFL, is off in the 18th round. Jalen Hyatt's off in the 18th round. Like these guys are sometimes going undrafted. And I actually really like taking them later on because of that. Also at the tight end spot, Daniel Bellinger off. He's not being drafted at times. There's a lot of interesting late round pass catchers for the New York Giants that I think are very valuable given their ADP. And you need 3 games from them. You need 3 games where they are starting in your lineup. And I think any one of those guys can do it. Pick your favorite. It'll be fun. Don't do it every time. We don't want to be overexposed to the Giants because who knows what happens, but they're definitely a great team to stack for depth. Now, who is the biggest trap on the board from these 2 teams?
I'm very open about my not trusting Anthony Richardson. Like he's going off the board at QB5, and I'm always like, why? Why are you going off the board at QB5? You flashed for 4 games, great. You didn't play much in college. You only have a little bit of tape in the NFL, and now all of a sudden we're drafting you as the 5th overall quarterback. That's great. Sure, it's risky and it could work. Like I mean, he's dynamic. What we saw was awesome. But when I'm looking for a quarterback in that range, I want someone that is more stable. Like, give me a Joe Burrow, who I think is going off the board at QB8. Like, I feel more solid with that. Or like a Dak Prescott as a QB 10 or 11. Like, I'd rather just wait, let someone else take the risk with Anthony Richardson. It could work out. I could look foolish, but I think even he's going ahead of CJ Stroud too, who did it for the entire year. Like, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I am out on Anthony Richardson at his current cost. It's just too much for me given all the unknowns. I'm going to go with a receiver on the opposite side of the ball. As much as I love a lot of the receivers, I don't love Malik Neighbors at his draft slot. He's going off the board as the wide receiver 20 right now. We don't often see multiple rookie receivers hitting their ceiling in their first season. As much as we've seen some pop off in recent years, it's still not the norm. And so I do feel nervous, particularly about the fact that he's going ahead of guys like Cooper Kupp, who, yeah, he's getting older, but it's still Cooper Kupp. DJ Moore, who had an incredible season last year, he's going ahead of Michael Pittman, Stephon Diggs, like there, T. Higgins. There are some guys who could have easily be solid wide receiver twos pushing up onto that wide receiver mark that are going after Malik Neighbors. I think I would rather go elsewhere than take Malik Neighbors at his current cost. Matt, what's your biggest question about these two teams?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but like it's the quarterbacks, like this disparity between the QB5 Anthony Richardson and the QB 25 there Daniel Jones. It's like, which is that true? Like, are those where they're supposed to be? You know, so if they both perform super great, then this is just a really tasty matchup where, yeah, grab 5 of these folks because you can get them for practically free. And someone's going to be catching the ball for the Giants, right? Like, someone's going to be doing something. So that, and then, yeah, can Anthony Richardson maintain that pace for the entire year? If so, again, the Colts offense is going to be dynamite as well.
Yeah, for me, the biggest question is, who is the goal line rusher for the Indianapolis Colts? Is it going to be Jonathan Taylor, who set the world on fire his rookie and sophomore seasons? Or is it going to be Anthony Richardson, who has that dual threat ability, and we saw him used in a lot of designed runs and has the ability to scramble with the best of them? It's a big open question. I think there's an interesting strategy, an interesting question of, do you take both of those together? Do you take Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson? I think there's an argument to be made there. You get every single one of their rushing touchdowns, most likely, and you can get the upside with Richardson if he does stay healthy. I don't love the ADP cost for getting both of those guys early, but if you are in on Richardson, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't also just take Jonathan Taylor and soak up most of the production, most of the pass yards, and most of the rushing yards. Now, if you are drafting these two teams, some other teams you need to keep an eye on. The Indianapolis Colts, they play Denver in week 15 and the Tennessee Titans in week 16. So again, the Colts side of this, they look like they might have some tough schedules down the stretch. I mean, Denver might be an easy matchup unless that defense takes a step forward, but Tennessee, they've historically had a good defense, so that could be a tough battle. The Giants, they play Baltimore and Atlanta in weeks 15 and 16. And the Ravens defense, that's a tough defense, but it does mean the Giants will need to be throwing the ball because they'll probably be playing from behind. However, the Atlanta Falcons are an awful defense going into this year, so that's a pretty nice week 16 matchup. So definitely be on the lookout for those stacks and correlations in weeks 15 and 16. But that is going to be all for this episode. Before you go, reminder to hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Look out for our next episode. We're getting to our 9th favorite week 17 matchup. We're almost halfway there. But for Matt Record, I'm Austin Amandolia. And remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and best ball wins money. See you next time.